Ross, welcome to the show. How are you, buddy?
Nice to see you.
Yeah,
Doing
nice to see
well.
you too. Excellent. Um, it's been a long time since we've connected. We obviously worked together for a period of time back in what seems like another life. So I'm really
Yeah.
excited to have this opportunity to reconnect with you and talk about software development, talk about what your company does, and also obviously the huge topic on everyone's mind is Ukraine these days, and you are Ukrainian native, uh,
Yep.
a native of Kyiv. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. That's right.
Yeah. So I think just to start, I wonder if you could sort of first relay to the audience here. Number one, is everyone is your family and your employees and everybody safe? Or are there any challenges that have come up with kind of just safety of keeping your team together?
Yeah, we were probably lucky, and I'm happy that all my family and our team members and even their families are fully safe or relatively safe. So no one's exposed to real danger of war at this point. So we are even managed to run a company
Right.
during wartime.
Right. I want to get into some of the stories you were just telling me before we started recording, but before we get there, I kind of want to, back up and talk a little bit about your personal history and your background. So you grew up in Ukraine. How did you, and you went to college there, right? Like the equivalent
Yeah,
of,
yeah, technical college. Yeah.
right. How did you get into software development? Like, how did you know that was a path for you? Was there anything growing up in Ukraine that kind of led you there, or just what is sort of the background of you getting into this world?
Yeah. Well, I think it's not really a fascinating story here, because I think it's like 50% of luck and 50% of curiosity. There was like so I grew up in a really small village in Ukraine, right? So in my hometown, nobody had a computer. So I've never seen a computer, so it was like something really like weird. So when I saw that first time, it just blew my mind. Like you have access to literally a different world. So from that point, I think I was 10 when I first saw a computer. I was 15 when I got access to the internet for the first time, and like that from since then, I really knew where I will end up being and like what industry, what I will do there. And when I saw the computer for the first time, when I started playing around, like I immediately made a decision to become a software developer. So when everyone else were like playing games, I was actually interested in like creating those games. So I was like, that's the next level. That's like a way more fascinating to actually create a game, just playing a game, but you follow the rules. So that was like a really easy path for me from that standpoint.
Interesting. So, are you basically self-taught up to the point? I guess I'm specifically talking about the point between, let's say, you're 15 and then going to university. Like,
Yeah.
what are resources? Like, what kind of resources were you looking at or learning from? At that point.
Oh, that was yeah. I am self-taught, and when I was looking back when I went to the college, that was at some points that was like hilarious. So I remember I created a game. So I didn't know algorithms or how to build a software. So I had to figure it out on my own. So I found the programming language. So I found the application that I can build, write code, and I just started like experimenting and like trying to figure out how to do it. So at one point I created a game, and because I didn't know how to write algorithms, I had to copy the code I wrote 200 times. And each time I was running to debugging, like trying to figure out if it works, and I found a mistake, I had to fix it in 200 times. So I was self-taught. I had a few books. And again, it's pure, I think that it just the energy of curiosity like helped me not to stop and like keep going. And that's also the interesting thing, that when we do recruiting, like even till today, I'm personally looking for this curiosity and energy in people. So like if somebody is like in this industry just for the hype or money or some interest not based on a software engineering itself, I'm noticing that it's not working really well. So if you want to find a really good software engineer, we always look like, what's your background, what's your history, how you got in, and like how you learned it, and like what's your motivation behind it.
Interesting. What were the other alternatives, I guess, at that point in time of your life? So if you weren't unbelievably curious about this sort of new world, right? Like what might you have done?
That's an interesting question. That's the first time I'm thinking about it. So because I've started like software engineering when I was 10 years old or something, I never had a second thought, like what have been the different path. Really, I have no answer to that, because I actually barely remember my life without being near the computer.
That's it's fascinating. And I like to ask that question sometimes, because I'm kind of the polar opposite of you. Like I still don't feel like I really know what I want to do, or you know, I mean, I've obviously cobbled together a work life, a career, right? And that scratches my creativity itch from the standpoint of building businesses, or I think there's a curiosity element to that, but there isn't like one singular, you know, I joke with my wife all the time. My wife's a doctor, and it's like, your path has been clear, you know, since you were little, and the same with you. So I try to like help the audience with, you know, hearing both sides of that. So I love that. I mean, I'm getting chills like just listening to you talk about being 10 years old and just knowing what you wanted to do with your life. That's fantastic. So you get to university and you continue your studies essentially in software development, right?
I actually dropped it in a few years. Okay.
So you did not complete?
No. And the reason for that is, again, when I went to Kyiv, I'm studying university. And then I was like, hey, I need more. Like that. I want to start writing a software, not like studying for like 5 years. Right. So I think after my second year, I've just found a job as a software engineer, and I've just started working. So by the time I had to get my master's degree, I think I founded a company, right? That was the same year. So I founded a company, and I had to choose from, like, do I want to get my master's degree, or I'm running a company, I'm building a software development company. And yeah, I made the choice.
I mean, it makes complete sense. Like, you know, I mean, you think about, there's so much talk, especially in the US, about the value of college education and talking. And I think for the vast majority of people, it is valuable, but there's this subsect of, you know, that we've sort of gotten away from, like the apprenticeship model, right? Like, in what you're not necessarily talking specifically about an apprenticeship model, but you're basically, that's what you did. You said, I want these skills. I'm not learning enough. I don't care about the theory. I want to do. And so I'm going to go find that out. And you just said, hey, I ultimately don't need the stamp of approval because I've acquired a skill set and I've acquired a reputation that is essentially greater than what the stamp of approval would give us. So that's like a really, you know, interesting point. And I think it probably takes a singular mindset to do that as well. Like, you know, you knew right? From the get-go, like that's what you wanted to do. So you do a little stint in university, you got a job, you've got a company. I don't really know, and again, I've known you for a little while, but I don't really know the story of how you got kind of hooked up with or over to the United States then. From that point, like how did that transpire?
So basically, so I started working at the company as software engineer, right? And there was some like a business culture, work culture, all of that. And for the most part, I was talking to my friends who were working in Ukrainian, Russian companies and like in Europe. And one thing I didn't like, and I had some like connections to the United States and like worked a little bit. And I really like the business culture, the way you run business in the United States, all the ethics and like the differences. And I think I was lucky to kind of have this side-by-side comparison when like work something with someone from Ukraine or Russia or Europe and Australia and then United States. And basically I just made a choice, okay, like that way of doing business works best for me. And that was literally the way I like cut off all the business I had with Australia and Europe and even Ukraine inside the country, because I was like, that's the way I want to build my company. And that was like intentional. And then I was just like digging to figure out how can I build partnership and some network in the US market.
Okay. And so the idea was to, how big was the company at this time that you're talking about?
It was like five people probably.
Yeah. So the idea was to build software in a client model, right?
Yeah.
And maintain an engineering team in Ukraine or Eastern Europe, right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Because I also saw the difference. Since I work with the different clients and different engineers across the globe, I kind of distilled the key differences. So I had like, here's the weaknesses, here's the strengths of different engineers and like and professions and countries, and like how we can build a strong team, knowing all those differences between the cultures, like because everything affects what you do. And that was our kind of idea of like building. I don't even like to say company. I prefer to say team because more about people. So we were like focusing on like how we can build a really strong team that can deliver for that specific market and that specific clients that we have.
How did you go about building those partnerships from Ukraine to the United States? Like how did that go for you? Or what were some of your tactics, I guess?
Well, I would say the best internet solved the whole thing, right? Because like I imagine building the business like ours or the company like ours like 30 years ago. It's like hands down impossible. So there were a lot of freelancing websites that we just got into. We figured our where we are good at. So we were like not acting as a just software engineering team. It was like specific type of software we can build. And we were like targeting those specific audience of like some startup trying to build that specific software that we know how to build. And we were just working on these freelance websites, building our profile, just basically under promise and over deliver. That was our strategy. So we had a team, I think by the time we had a team of less than 10 people, we were in the top 50 companies on one freelance website, like overall.
Okay.
So yeah, that worked really well.
Yeah, I continue even today, like if with kind of the proliferation of freelancing in all sorts of different areas, graphic design or, you know, digital marketing or whatever it is, it's really interesting because I've seen both sides, that a lot of companies, Fortune 500 companies, use freelance websites like
Yeah.
Upwork and things like that. And they end up, you know, finding somebody that way, creating a one-to-one relationship, and potentially, you know, even hiring them. So it's really interesting. You're kind of ahead of your time in terms of, you know, building a company off of using those sites. So that's really, really interesting to me. So was this your current company, or is it, or was this kind of the prelude to your current company?
I would say it's the same. Well, the company changed, but it's the same name, same company for the whole run.
Okay.
Yeah. So we just so I met Adam on the Freelancing website.
Okay.
He was our client, and when we worked with him, then we had this idea of like, we started talking, we built some friendship, and they were like, yeah, let's just run a company together.
Okay. Interesting. All right. Very cool. So where do I want to go next here? Oh yeah. Okay. So I want to talk about, so you've built essentially a company that has US based clients. You have sort of business development, US based. You have an international software development team. You were talking to me about what you guys have been doing related to moving the team around, especially with what's happening in Ukraine. But talk to us a little bit about the evolution of that. Did you originally start in kind of a centralized office in Ukraine with the team? Is that how that started?
Yeah. So we had we had an office. We always had an office. We were like really centralized company, actually. We had a dream to being able to work remotely. At the same time, we never had illusions that we can just like snap on a finger, become a remote company and be as effective as we are being together in the office. So it's a really important, like we had a lot of discussions with the team. It's really important to understand that being remote, it's not a privilege. Like, you have to build a remote first company, and it's extremely hard to build. So we were like taking steps towards that approach. Then we got I would say, help from a pandemic. So we became remote in a single day. But it was a long run to do that. So right now, when everything happened 1 month ago, we were ready because of pandemic. We were like set up to effectively communicate and work remotely, and being able to organize ourselves really quickly.
Okay, so I want to get into the story you're kind of telling me right before we started recording, which is to set it up, pandemic kind of forces you guys to go remote, and through that evolution of going remote and figuring out how you build this culture that works and this company that operates remote first. You guys kind of had a dream to move around a little bit, right? As a team. So talk to us a little bit, because right now you're in Italy. Talk to us about a little bit about like what you were thinking, and then how the team has moved around, where you guys have been. Just kind of get into a little bit of that.
Yeah. So 5 years ago, before we went remote, we had this idea and dream to get a team, most of a team or part of a team, and like rent a big house in Bali or Thailand or India or Sri Lanka, and just work remotely for a month, like located in one house, like together, going surfing in the morning and do all this cool stuff and also work. So this year, we're like, hey, we are like really ready from a work remotely standpoint. So we got 15 people, some with their families, We rented out a big house. That was end of January. So for the months of February, we decided to go and just work remotely for some time with the team. And that ended up being on a different plan. So we stayed there longer, obviously. And now we try to set up office or location for the team. So I'm in Europe right now. I'm in Italy. Most likely I will fly to Portugal or somewhere else. So we're still moving around, trying to figure out where we want to settle. But yeah, that's a short story.
Okay, so how did you make the decision? Because this was obviously with the whole team. So how did you make the decision to go to Sri Lanka?
Mm-hmm.
How did that go? Is there a lot of debate?
Yeah.
Like...
Yeah. Well, that's a good question. We've implemented. So there's an idea of meritocracy or something.
Meritocracy.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what we're implementing in our company. So every decision we make, pretty much every decision we make, we basically making a voting process. And then we have obviously a board, we have a CEO, like all those roles. And then we're just looking at all these pros, cons, what the team wants, how people feel, and then we make a final decision. So same with the Sri Lanka remote work. It's like, do we want to go work remotely? Yes. Some people said no. What the countries we want to go? It was Sri Lanka, Turkey, Cyprus, Thailand, Egypt, and then we're just figure out all the other factors and just made a final decision, and everyone who agreed with that will just joined us.
Okay, so some people did not join. Is that correct?
Yeah. It was not a full team. So we have a team of 40, and we got 15 people on a trip.
Okay, that makes sense. And then, so the big elephant in the room wrinkle to that story is you were slated to come back to the Ukraine in late February, right?
Yeah.
And as everybody knows, we have a little war brewing there, and so that kind of complicated your decision to come back. What was the decision process then like for the team? Was that okay, just go remote from anywhere that you can be, or do you have, obviously you're in Italy right now, but do you have people centrally located with you in Italy? How did that all work?
Yeah. So first of all, we never even the day before the war started, we never believed that's going to happen. That was impossible, zero chance. We had our flights 2 days after the war started, and we were coming back. So even all the media buzz we had, when everything happened, I would say for a week or 2 weeks. So the decision process really chaotic, I would say, for the first few weeks. It's you have no idea what's going on. The first priority was just to get people in the safe locations. So we were in the Sri Lanka. I would say we literally took just 1 day off to process things, and then we said, okay, the best thing we can do right now is to refocus on work while the rest of the team go into a safe place. We have to keep working to make sure we do not lose any business and show to our clients that we keep working. So the decision process was really, I would say, cold-headed. We are safe. The best thing we can do, we can keep working. Everyone else get to a safe place, and then establish your workspace and try to get back to normal life and work as soon as possible. Obviously, with the focus on, we had another this voting process, is how we can help Ukrainian people. So we've immediately started thinking about how we can help volunteers and children and hospitals, and set up that whole process as a part of our company, and made it our day-to-day routine, to figure out how we can actually help the country. So, and since then, that's the way we operate right now, setting up priorities and just moving towards.
Okay, because at the time you had a significant portion of the team still in Ukraine, and you still have some people in Ukraine, but they're in relatively safe places, correct?
Yeah. I would say right now we kind of distributed. We still have a third of our team in Ukraine in the safe places. Luckily, we have a third of our team in Europe, and we have another third in the United States.
Okay, and Europe, they're kind of scattered around Europe. Is that correct? Like you're in Italy.
Yes.
I think you said Poland, Portugal.
All over the place.
How are you deciding where to go next?
That's the toughest question. I cannot express how hard it is to make that decision. So we rented apartments in Italy. Just to give you perspective and context of this decision-making process, our rent period ends in 2 days, and we still didn't make a decision. So I like to travel a lot. I always wanted to go different countries. Right now, the only place I want to get to is Kyiv. So it makes it impossible to choose from like Europe or United States or anywhere in the world. There's only one place you want to go, and it's so hard to even like distract yourself from I cannot go back to Ukraine. Again, physically I can, so I'm not saying it's impossible, but I was like, how we can focus and be more productive, and where we can be more productive, and like figuring out and picking that spot, that's extremely tough. And so we're still in that process, and I'll let you know when we figure it out, and I'll share a story of how we ended up winning over the psychology and making the most productive decision there.
Cool. And you have family, correct?
Yeah.
So how has that been on your immediate family? You have kids? Is that correct?
Yeah. I have a son. He's 6-year-old now.
Okay. I have three kids, and I can't imagine like, kind of forcibly having to move them around. So how have they been doing with the whole thing?
Yeah. So it's the same thing. I was lucky because that was the way we lived our life for like last 5 years. So we've moved to the United States for a year. Then we moved back to Kyiv. We lived in Europe for a few months. Then we moved back to a different apartment in Kyiv. So luckily my son, like it's a normal experience for him. He's moving around. He got used to moving around. So he actually did not understand what happens to the degree that he's just keep traveling, right? So that was from that standpoint, that was really easy transition, because technically, at least for him, there was no transition. He just lives a normal life as he used to. So that was pretty easy on that.
Okay. And so you ultimately want to get back to Kyiv, obviously. I think 97% of the international community wants to see that things just return to normal for everyone involved, and especially you guys. What is the state of things in Kyiv at the moment? I think you were kind of telling me that it's relatively safe, actually, despite what maybe a lot of places.
It's really hard to give the context, because I mean it's a war, so right. It's with all brutality as it is. Being safe in Kyiv is also relative to being in other cities that are like really occupied and are under massive attacks. So it's all like, it's hard to say, it's even harder to stay safe. At the same time, I do realize that this war will not end in 1 month or maybe even 3 months or maybe even a year. I do have, like, I painted out different scenarios just for myself to be ready that this war can be a really frozen conflict for years. So yeah, so it's really living in this world of, at one hand, you're really hopeful that the whole thing will end in 1 month or a few weeks, and you really hope for that. That helps you stay positive and live a life. At the same time, you're doing some long-term planning, and you understand that, hey, it may be a few years, and you cannot go around living in Italy or Portugal or Spain for like a few weeks here and there. So it's basically the what's in my head right now is like trying to merge those two different worlds together and like build a plan and not go crazy at the same time.
Yeah, and I think as you're experiencing, part of dealing with uncertainty is having scenario A, B, C, and D, which kind of forcibly runs counter to optimization, right? Like there's so many people, I think, especially to me in the US, right? We want to optimize everything. We want to, in our lives, right? Everything has to run smoothly. And it's like, when uncertainty happens and when you have to deal with an uncertain world, like you have to build redundancy, and you have to sort of scenario plan and be ready for multiple options. Like that's the only way that you actually deal well with uncertainty, which is kind of I think a takeaway for our listeners is like relate. Our listeners are not in your situation, but take from this conversation like what you have to actually do and what's forced upon you in a situation of extreme uncertainty, and you can build that into your life today for whatever smaller problem that you may encounter.
It may be, and that's what I'm also learning. Like apart from watching news and being stressed out about the war and people dying out there, I'm also trying to learn something and incorporate it in my life, like with a way smaller problems. But yeah, that's I think that will help a lot. And we have this joke, like we started joking even, but we have the joke like in a CVs, every Ukrainian can then create a note that stress resistance, and you just say, I'm Ukrainian. So we have we'll have a maximum stress resistance for sure after everything happening.
Yeah. So when you're screening candidates, right, and you're looking at how does this person perform under stress? I'm Ukrainian. That's fantastic.
Exactly. Yeah,
it makes a lot of sense. I want to be respectful of your time, but I do want to ask a couple of questions that are more, I think, tactical to people developing skills and things like that. So I guess like I've always been curious, as obviously, and me, I'm not super technical. What from your vantage point, like, what do you think are the top 3 or 1 to 3 skills that someone who's not technical needs to acquire in order to deal well with the explosion of technology and work with technical people like yourself? Like what are the things that need to bridge that gap?
I would say the ability to search information, the ability to, I would say, question what was said and try to distill like the key points. So like you have That's actually a great question, because like I always deal with like clients, they're not technical, and then try to choose which software development company to go with their project. And basically the best skill you can get is to learn how to distill that technical stuff that I do not understand from some judgment that I can make based on the skill set I have. So like trying to incorporate in a decision-making process some things that I do have expertise on, and test those like companies or that I'm trying to choose from, how they respond to it, and then you can extrapolate on the technical decisions they're making. So it's like a complex answer. It's not a specific skill, but that's something really important to figure out how to do, because that's I would say that's a cornerstone to all the successful and not successful projects in the tech industry.
I think how I would say it from my standpoint, at least, and I think I actually learned this from working with you and your team, like back in the day, is we need to understand at a basic level how software sort of is created and how the logic backs it. And it's not that hard to learn, because once you learn that and understand it, I think you're able to create a user story or a description of what you want, the end product, the end result, that is more relatable to like someone on your team. I think like it's basically that it's connecting it. Like I can go describe, oh yeah, build me this app that does these things, right? But there's so many steps, I guess, and micro decisions. And a lot of times the end result isn't doable in the exact way that you think it might be in your head, because you're skipping all the middle. And so having like be able to have an appreciation for how that, like the process of creating those things, I think is a game changer in my opinion. At least it opened my eyes. So that's, I guess, how I would say it.
It's I would say it's operating on a more abstract level. So when you talking about the software development, actually the good idea would be to forget about software development and just describe in really plain words and terms of like how the thing that you try to build should operate, what the logic should be, like step by step, really detailed. Forget about how it will be implemented. Just describe the algorithm itself. That would be the important part to it.
Yeah, that's actually, I think, a really great way to put it, because when a lot of times you just describe the end result, as I said, right? Like here's the output that we
exactly.
The algorithm isn't a mathematical formula up on a whiteboard necessarily. It's really in describing each step and how it sequences and what it does. And so a non-technical person can build an algorithm by making sure you go through those steps. So I think that's really interesting. I'm glad you brought that up, because that's made me even think about it in a different light. What about somebody who's into, I think about my kids, right? I think about my kids my kids are 10, 8, and 5. What are the best resources out there for people to start learning how to code, how to build software? Maybe not specifically for kids, although you have a 6-year-old, so I'm assuming you have got that guy on some kind of protocol. But let's start at high school or something like that. Like, what are the best resources that people can do to learn that craft?
Well, so actually for the 5-year-old, I've got my son a little bit into so the not popular version would be games. Like the computer games are actually a great way to start thinking of algorithms and like planning step by step and like doing some actions. So I got my son into chess, and Minecraft. So he's playing Minecraft, and I'm watching he's playing. That's actually good. It's kind of good metaphor for software engineering, because like you take these blocks and you piece them together and you get an outcome. So if you piece two different blocks, you get something else. That's kind of the way software works. So I would say for like 5-year-old, Minecraft is a great entry point. And later in the down the road, when you start with games, the way I started, it was like I was playing games. And I was like, how can I create a game? And there are a lot of resources that help you like creating a game by programming some actions of the character. So I would say there's like a natural way that you start playing games, you figuring out algorithms on its own, then you play some games, and then you learn how to program characters in a game, and then you got into creating a game or creating the software.
Do you recommend any or have any particular favorite coding boot camps, coding classes or things like that? I'm thinking about our listeners who are mid-career, early career, just out of college, and would like to try to add this skill to their repertoire.
Honestly, I would say it's more important to start than, so it's less about what to learn. It's about just go and start learning. There are many resources because I'm learning from time to time. I want to learn a new language or new technology just for myself. I'm not coding for the last 10 years. And the most important part is just go there and like start playing around, start a course, start writing some code, like some really basic, like it's really can be really basic stuff. But when you get into and you start playing around, then it's easier to make a decision of like, yeah, this is what I want to learn more, or I want to shift in a different direction, right? So a lot of my friends asking me like, what language should I choose? What programming language should I choose? I was like, pick any. It doesn't matter at the beginning. When you will start writing some code, then it will be easier for you to make a decision. Like, do I want to do some more complex stuff? Do I like more like a visual part of it? Do you want to do like a low-level engineering? You'll get where your heart is going.
Okay, cool. You have for people who want to, I guess, reach out or learn more about you, where can people find you?
I'm pretty much everywhere, on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. I held all the accounts there.
Okay. So we can, we'll make sure we link to those in our show notes. And then you're also kind of raising money for people in Ukraine and doing and have a bunch of activity there. Where can people learn more about that activity?
Yeah, so we've started a fundraiser on GoFundMe campaign that supports our donation as a company that we do on a monthly basis, and we're just raising from our communities and our network and everyone who wants to get involved. We have
What's the URL there? Do you know it offhand? Because I think there's a page on your website, right?
Yeah, there's a page. We have a page on the Bilberrry website that we can give a link to listeners, and they can read about how we help and just join the GoFundMe campaign.
Okay, we'll make sure we link to that also in the show notes and everything. Ross has been great. I really appreciate you taking the time and catching up. I'm glad to hear you're safe, your team's safe. I'm glad to hear about all the great work you're doing. Building companies and doing great work for clients. So that's just fantastic. And I'm just super happy to see your face and connect again. So I really appreciate you being on the show.
Yeah, same. Thank you.
All right, man. Take care.
Cheers.